All right, good morning. I'm going to call this special meeting of the Mayor and Council's first budget workshop to order. I'd ask that we all please rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just ask we please have a moment of silent observation to honor the troops defending this country all over the world. Thank you. Could we please have the appropriate opening statements read?
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this special meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on January 17, 2007, by the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press and Tri-Town News for publication on January 17, 2007, by the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on January 17, 2007. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127, NJAC 17:27. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exiting the meeting room to the rear, they are to your immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room at the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton? Here. Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Present.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mayor DeBella?
Here. Mr. Janeski, why don't you give us a quick itinerary of the agenda that you have in store for us, please?
Yes, sir. First of all, good morning. And this morning we are going to hear presentations from Mr. Costigan, representing the Preservation Task Force, and Senior Services Director Carol Zur, Chief of Police Ron Carter, Public Works Director Jeffrey Kramer. And time permitting, we will go through the manager's budget as well. So my hope is to get us out of here by noon today. I know a number of us are somewhat under the weather and have other pressing family obligations to get to.
Hey, just for the record, I have a hard stop at noon, so I've got to leave at 12.
Understood.
So if you want to continue, that's certainly fine.
Okay. Just to kind of set the stage, and recognizing that 2 of our council members, it's their first municipal budget process, would like to point out that, in a sense, it's also my first full one from the start. But a couple, coming in halfway last year, we changed the format a little bit, and I gleaned a few positive inputs from that, from the sitting council, that we want to, I think, take forward. I think the understanding ought to be, the proper understanding at this point is that the department heads have an obligation to tell you what it is they think they need. And you should not feel compelled at this point to make a decision one way or the other. You should feel free, and I know you all do, to ask as many questions as you like. All the questions you ask, all the points you raise, the finance staff, the deputy manager, and myself, we make careful notes on to go back and research. After the department heads are done making their presentations 3 meetings from now, we understand that the council has to weigh the economic well-being of the town versus their responsibility as officers of a corporation that delivers public services. So you folks are elected to do a tough balancing act. It's our job to let you know what we think is needed to deliver the best possible services, but you have so many other values that you have to weigh, and we understand that. But to kick it off, we're going to do our jobs and let you know what it is we think we need, and also come to you with decision points that we'd like you to make or to consider. The way we're going to roll it all up is at the last few presentations, and this is what we did last year, is we went through a list. For example, here are the capital improvements that were approved last year. Through a series of paring down, prioritizing what's important for the community, that's how we decided on what the capital improvements were going to be. We implemented some benchmarks that we built, that in this year's budget we built upon, and the council pared it down to what they thought was appropriate. So again, we want to get input from everyone, but then we want to consider it as a whole. For example, you may get a legitimate request from one department for a new car. You may receive another legitimate request from another department for 3 cars. But what we're going to want to do at the end of the day is look at the mileage, the labor and parts costs for all 4 of those cars to determine what our priorities are going to be. So that's why it's important to listen to each department, but understand that at the end, it's all going to be rolled up for you to make decisions about. And likewise, here is just an example of the human resources that exist in our community. And we did a management efficiency study, and the management efficiency study indicated that more personnel were needed in the areas where there's an asterisk. But obviously, council needed to weigh the cost of that and against the economic realities in our town, and we decided on 1, which we thought was most strategically important at the time. So that's how the process is going to work. You'll get a lot of requests for personnel, a lot of requests for capital improvements. I would urge you to listen to what they have to say, and then let's save our final decisions for the end.
Can I ask you something?
Absolutely.
Some of the things you've mentioned to us in the past, did you do an inventory of all the vehicles in Howell Township?
Yes, we do have an inventory.
You do have an inventory?
Yes, but what you will hear from the departments is the benchmarks that we looked at. You'll hear from them where their own fleets stand on those benchmarks, and you'll see that probably most clearly when Carol Zur does her presentation. But they'll all be rolled up into one fleet presentation at the end of the whole process.
Can we, Mr. Chernetsky, just being mindful of our time and trying to manage the meeting, knowing we've got Mr. Costigan and then 1, 2, 3, and potentially 4 other departments, how much time have you allocated for each department?
Between 30 minutes and 45 minutes, depending on the questions.
Okay.
Mr. Costigan said he needed 10.
Right.
I could do it in 10.
I feel like I'm going to name that tune.
Okay.
All right, Tom, keep going. Mr. Chernetsky, I'm sorry, please. You know, before you do that, this is somewhat of a unique budget in that I think it's Mr. Filiatro's last with us. So I would be remiss if we didn't at least acknowledge he's probably done. How many budgets have you been involved with, Mr. Filiatro?
14.
He's been involved in 14 municipal budgets, and as history has been explained to me, he became involved potentially at the most dangerous or tumultuous time from a financial perspective with the town when he was brought to come here and try and get the finances back on track. So he knows how I feel about him. I think it's an absolutely terrible, devastating loss that he's going to go to the private sector, because he has been absolutely stellar as a CFO. And the young man sitting next to him, our new deputy CFO, whatever you can learn from him in the time he's here, do it. Because in all the years I've been involved in public government, there's no finer chief financial officer. So your last one, hopefully we won't make it that painful for you.
Thank you.
Or then again, we may make it painful just to help you on the way out. I'm sorry, Mr.
It's
Chernetsky.
okay, Mayor. It's your meeting. The first thing we're going to kick off our meeting with, Mayor, is a discussion on the open space tax. Because, one, we know that property taxes are a pressing issue in this community. And also because we really need some direction now that we have a clearer picture of open space revenues associated with the new valuations in the township. Council will recall that there was an interest in increasing the open space tax, and staff advised that we really ought to wait until the reval is done so we have a better picture of what the revenue stream is going to be. This is such an important issue for us because it really needs to be viewed as a tax relief and economic development initiative. Given the tax structure in New Jersey, as you can see from this chart, basically single-family homes are a tax negative for our community as a whole. The local papers recently published per pupil costs in our community I think we're starting to approach something in the neighborhood of $10,000 per pupil. So unless you're paying $20,000 in taxes, and if you have 2 school children enrolled in our schools, and you're paying, unless you're paying $20,000 in taxes, your contribution's a tax negative on our system. So preserving as much farmland is important for balanced planning, and it's also open space preservation increases property values. Things you all know about and things you've all said are very important to you. But that's why we're kicking off with this, because again, we see this as ultimately something that can help lighten the tax burden by making this investment now. So let me just go back. I would ask Mr. Costigan to outline for us, and we have a map here, and I provided you with 2 maps, and I have more if you'd like, showing all the open space that we've saved. But basically, since 2000, we've added close to 500 acres of preserved land to our inventory. That's an increase of about 14 or 15% from where we were in 2000, between farmland preservation and the municipal open space acquisitions. The total preserved area in the town between parks, county parks, municipal open space amounts to about 10%. I would say if you're looking for a quality place to live, a community that has 10% of its land permanently preserved is quite impressive and something we need to sell, most definitely. But I would ask Mr. Costigan to just kind of walk through some of the fine work he's done on the farmland preservation program. Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and council, men and women. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Number one, I noticed Barshowski's farm is not here. There's a total of 9 farms that are preserved right now, including the Mead Farm, which is also not here. That was done in 1987. None of us had anything to do about it. Mr. Mead took care of that himself. This is actually 2001, not that it matters. Keemer Farm also took care of it all on its own, except there were some little glitches, and they got preserved several years after they applied. I can show you where these farms are on this map.
They're in pink. The ones that are in pink.
Oh, yeah, good, okay. I was going to go for the green. This is the Mead Farm. We had nothing to do with that. They did it on their own. The Keemer Farm is over here. The Marchese Farm is
Casino.
I'm looking for Casino.
Go down.
John, is it up, right, straight up?
I'm looking for pink.
Yeah.
See
see-
where
Yeah,
little
all
green
right,
is?
that's the Marchese Farm. Archibald Farm is up here. Part of it is also in freehold, about 14 acres into freehold. We're not showing that on this map. The Linney Farm is on 5 Points Road, right here. Acres Mazza is not saved. I see you have it down there. There's some glitches with that, and we're still working on that. So that isn't saved. But the Mazza farm is, Acres Mazza is approximately in here. And the Casal farm is also on Casino. That's over here. Is that Casino? Yes. And the Costigan farm is up here on, That's the Costigan farm. It's not in pink. But it's this one right here. And that's the Peacock farm. You don't have that either. The Peacock farm is right here. One, two. The Ferrens farm is also not preserved yet. There's glitches on that. There's several that we're pulling our hair out to try and make it happen. So, anyway, so that's that. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to tell you. The map isn't quite exactly, it doesn't reflect exactly. Now, I didn't put the price form in, and generally, I don't put that on my list, although the whole negotiation from 1999 right through came from the Preservation Task Force. And the price form, the reason we couldn't preserve it, and the only way it could be done was with Green Acres, was I couldn't get it into a pig. That's way down here on Locust Road, right near Echo Park, or right near Echo Lake. Is that this one?
To your left.
Oh, thank you. Okay, and that's in two sections. That's the Green Acres. Okay, so to make a long story short,
Maybe let me just kick that off.
well, you know, there may be more you want me to do. I can tell you what we're looking to take.
Before you, just to move on, Mr. Costigan, so you're saying that that list under farmland is not, that doesn't list everything?
No, I have listed there, sorry, my printer wasn't working, so I had to redo it this morning. What I have on the top left-hand side under preserved farms, I have all the preserved farms. The last one I put was price, and I put it in backhand so it would look a little bit like an italics.
To make sure we understand this, Mead to Price are farms that have been preserved.
Yes, price being preserved with Green Acres.
And Price was, what year was Price? It doesn't have that down.
You know what? I don't remember. Probably around 2003-ish.
Actually, I think we received that Green Acres funding, and then, if you remember, we received the Monmouth County Municipal Open Space Grant also for that property, and I believe Mr. Costigan's probably about right. About 2003, we might have finally closed the grant out 2004.
Okay.
Now, you've got these farm now, next to, I guess, Mead is where you're giving us the address, so it does go left to right.
Yeah, I prefer.
This is a unique
Mr. Mayor,
spreadsheet in today's
Go down
day
the
and age.
column first.
Okay.
Okay. Because all of the names that I have here are on record. So everything else is still not on record. So underneath the preserved farms, I have the eminent preservation. These 6 farms totaling 300 acres plus or minus are all farms that I was hoping we would close in 2006. But they're not going to close probably until March, and that has nothing to do with us. That has to do with the state getting a closing date. But all the surveys are done, all the monies, everything's there. We're just waiting for a date to close.
All
So-
our money is there, sir?
Well, all our money is there. I did ask to stay for another, just under $1,968,400 to finish closing these 6. But I gave them the order of preference on how I wanted them closed if they're not going to give us that money.
John, if I can
All our money is there?
Well, if I can just jump in at this point. The sheet you have before you, the open space fund projection,
Mm-hmm.
that reflects our estimate based on the new valuation calculations and how much we're going to collect. The current open space tax can now meet our bond payments, basically our mortgage on all the open space that we acquired. And we've projected that on top of what's been bonded, just using the open space tax, we have the capacity to bond an additional $13 million for preservation, either outright acquisition or farmland preservation. And I think the policy decision that, Mr. Deputy Mayor, you're now raising is this. Mr. Costigan essentially needs a budget. Now that we know how much we can anticipate to be funded by the open space tax, we are asking council to consider some limit, at least at a first phase, that he can work towards, so that we know if there are any acquisitions we want to do, we can deduct that. It had been the case in the past that 1 cent of the open space tax was dedicated to farmland preservation. But then when it was renewed or combined or increased, it was blended. So there really isn't a separate budget for farmland preservation versus open space acquisitions. Now, to acquire farmland, typically, as you've seen, is a 2 or 3 year process to negotiate with the owner, with the state. So I think we're looking to council to give us some comfort level that Mr. Costigan can work towards within that $13 million.
What kind of budget are you looking for, Mr. Costigan?
Well, Mr. Walsh, I was looking more for a line of credit type of operation.
I think
If
we
you,
all
all right, if you give me 11 million, I can close on everything. But having said that, that's also including the state money, because we can't guarantee what's going forward with the state. This is the last year we're going to be getting our money from the state. We never got what we should have gotten, and we're at least $5.5 million shy of what the state told us they would give us. But there's reasons for that that has nothing to do with anyone on this council up here now.
With Howell Township is short $5.5 million?
Howell Township was shorted $5.5 million. Yes, because early on, there was no farms being preserved. When this 15 million total at $1.5 million a year for 10 years, when it was initiated, we were given 1.5 million for the first year, but we never preserved anything until the present administrator, or till January 1st, 2003. That's when we started moving very quickly on preserving farms. But at that point, in August of 2002, the state and the county were going to wipe us out and give us no more money because there was nothing done. So they felt, let us put the money someplace in other townships, in other counties, and our county as well, where action or activity is happening in the preservation area. So as of January 1st, 2003, that's when we really got moving. And that's where probably 18 of the 20 farms that we will have preserved by March or April, whenever the state gets around to it, 18 of those farms were all preserved since that time. So we never got $1.5 million for the 10 years. We got $1.5 million for 1 year, nothing for another year, 233,000 for another year, 300 and something thousand for another year. We never got our money. We still have never gotten our 1.5 million after the initial, and that's just the way it is.
Mr. Costigan got it right. Apparently, when this was first launched, and it was prior to any of us up here, it didn't take off.
It didn't take off at all.
And in 2003, we said to John, you have the dollars, go
Yep.
do it, we'll stay out of the way. To his credit, once we charged him with doing it, you can see, once he was freed up, what he was able to put together.
The Preservation Task Force, not
Of course.
John, not just me.
I think where we really don't want to wind up is 3 or 4 years down the road where we have a balance in the open space trust fund, but it wasn't spent because they weren't sure what their authority was, and meanwhile the farms may no longer be available. So that's why I think strategically it's important to set aside, at least as a first phase, $5 million, so he can work towards that and feel confident that we've encumbered that money that we're not going to touch for any other purposes.
I have a couple of technical questions for Mr. Costigan, just to put this in perspective. You probably have somewhere, maybe it's on this sheet, but what are the other farms that are on your radar screen, other than the ones that say farms with issues? Because obviously, it sounds like you want to get those.
Yeah.
Well, imminent preservation, I think you've already tagged.
Yes.
So those are
there's
on
just-
your radar screen?
Yes.
Where are they in the process? Have you gotten appraisals?
Everything
Nowhere?
is done.
Okay.
It's just between the county and the state, they haven't finalized the deeds, and they just haven't arrived at a closing date.
So
and
from
they're-
Tulo to, what's the last?
Cudahy.
one? From Tulo to Cudahy, what's the dollars that you'd need to get from the town? Just give us that.
If I had the county's paying their share, they're already budgeted for these.
Yeah, just a Howell portion.
All right, Howell portion for that is going to be, well, I didn't put that down.
Ballpark.
Tulo is probably, hold on one second and I'll tell you. probably about 300,000 for Tulo, probably about 16% of $1.7 million for Plumtree, probably about 100,000 for Sunset Stables.
What is that number, Mr. Filiatro? on
Use
Plum Tree?
275 as a round number.
I use 300.
Okay, yeah, if you just,
Go ahead. How about the
how
list,
about
right?
this, if Mr. Filiatto's got the calculator right on, Tulo's gonna be about $2.1 million total. We take 16% of that.
Okay.
The state pays 60%. All right, so between Tulo's 2.1, Plumtree is 1.7 million, Sunset Stables is about 500 and change. Turpac is probably,
Slow down.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's only got
Jeff's
10
having a hard
minutes.
time putting
Yeah.
and change in the calculator.
Oh, okay, well,
They don't have that button on this.
Go back to
calculator.
Plumtree.
Plumtree is about, is $1.7 million.
All right, go ahead, and I'll do the calculations later.
Sunset Stables is
Hang on.
25 times 27 acres times 25,000 an acre.
675,000.
Okay. Turpac is probably 14 times 23,000 an acre, give or take.
I'll throw 350,000.
Okay. Shopman Shaffrey is 200,000. And Cudahy is 1.1 million. Some of that is being paid by the freehold. There are 25 acres in freehold. They're paying at 12,000 an acre. So,
So do you have a total, Mr. Filiatro?
Yeah. Is that right? About 838,000 of township share, the 60%.
So you're looking for about 838,000 from the township. So that's
Okay.
at least a number that you need.
yes.
Okay. So then if you go down to the farms with issues,
Farms with issues.
you're looking for another 450. It
Well,
looks like you
yeah,
gave us the
yeah,
number.
exactly.
Okay, so 838 and 450 is how much, Mr. Filiatro? You got these numbers?
1.2,
1.3.
1.28.
So you're looking for about
1.29.
$1.3 million, which gets us 360, 70 acres, something like that. If you just add it up, whatever, 10, 20.
61, 79. About 410, somewhere in that ballpark.
So let's say you want 1.3 million for about 400 acres. Is there anything that is on your radar screen that isn't on this list? Are there any
On
other
that
farms out
column.
there?
Well, all right, going over to the right-hand side
Okay.
of the page, if you just go down to the very bottom, there's $1.6 million of our share of everything else that's on this page.
Okay, so 1.6 million would give us everything on this page,
From the
excluding the
Howell
ones that have
Township
already been preserved.
Share, yes.
And is that all, and I guess that contemplates Havens Bridge, Howell Road, and Brickyard?
Yes. Everything on that side of the page.
Just shy of 3 million.
And the total of that is, well, you're saying it's 1.6.
Yeah.
Or you said 3 million, Ms. Schulman?
I said just in totality, just shy of 3 million. Of all the,
Oh, of everything,
all of our
including what was
obligations,
done
correct.
prior. So you're asking us for $1.6 million to go get the rest of these farms, is that right?
Yes.
And Mr. Filiatro, can you walk us through this exhibit,
Right.
which I think
But-
is where you're talking about the money comes
Yeah.
from?
But there's another ingredient that you have to look at, and then that's your choice, your decision. We may have to be fronting the money that the state and the county
Right.
will or will not pay. So that's why that 10 million on the very bottom on that side, not including anything on the left column, just the right column, the total prices, and that's my estimate, is 10 million plus.
Are we guaranteed of getting the money back if we front it? Mr.
We don't,
Council?
that's the problem, we don't know. My opinion is, there's probably a good chance we will. I think Mr. Chinesky and I were talking about this on Wednesday, and we're very lucky we have Mr. Chinesky here as a manager, because he's got prior planning experience, and he knows what happens in other towns where they had preservation going on. And I won't speak for him, but I got the indication that if we put it before the state, they'll find the money.
There's two strategies we were talking about. One being this, that first of all, even in the absence of state and county funding, it's not unheard of for towns to go it alone in terms of buying the development rights to a farm. And because you can't always count on that money being there, and still, just in terms of preservation, that's much more economical than buying it outright. Secondly, you know, the state and county, they want to be successful in these preservation efforts. If they know that money's been budgeted, that it's there, when you do the grant application, and you don't mark that your share is contingent upon council budget approval in the coming year, you know, that gives you a competitive advantage as a municipality by saying, you know, if you're ready to go, we're ready to go.
It's kind of like when you're selling a house.
Right.
You're going to take, I can pay today offer before you're going to take a contingency offer.
Right, so there's a strategic advantage there to having the monies available.
All right, now just for the rest of the council, Mr. Costigan and I had spoken, and I mentioned it to Mr. Chinesky the other day too, about trying to devise revenue streams for the preservation task force. And I know that there was an applicant in front of the planning board that was going to be dedicating 35 acres of farmland as part of a development to the township. And I spoke to John and to another individual on the preservation task force, where if we could take just 30 of those 35 acres, and as the township being the owner, put them into the preservation task force, we would then be able to generate the 84% of the land value from the state and the county without having to kick in our 16%, because we would be the landowner. At the same point in time, I asked Mr. Chinesky to investigate the possibility of then leasing the 30 acres, either to one farmer, two farmers, or three farmers. And give them a 10-year lease. You could base it on, look, it's $2,000 an acre per year, or whatever number we came up with, or a percentage of the profits per year. And instead of having that money come back into the general fund for the township, if we could put that right back into the township's preservation fund. So at some point in time, it could become a self-funding process, where we wouldn't have to budget money, because we would have a constant revenue stream coming into that account. You know, and then we would be guaranteed of preserving that land forever. We would get money from the state and the county to begin to fund that account, and then yearly we would get a rent check from the farmers that would be leasing that property from us.
There's definitely things we can look at.
I just have a question on this. It looks like, based on the reval, there's obviously going to be additional revenue because of the change, if you will, the projection. So we're going to collect 1.3 million in projected revenue in '07 into the total open space fund, right?
That would be the balance after paying the...
No, the balance is a 1.2. My projections based on the ratables as of Monday, it would produce $1,370,000 worth of revenue in 2007.
And are you then saying that we have a balance going in of 1.2 million, we're going to generate another 1.3, so there's a cumulative total of, 2.5?
Yes. If you spend it on nothing.
If we didn't,
Yes.
if we didn't spend anything, we expect this budget plus prior surpluses or monies unspent would be about 2.5 million roughly available. And isn't a portion of that can be used for farms, and a portion of that can be used for non-farm recreation, based on how the two different taxes were passed, right?
What I've shown here, and maybe if you look at everything that's on there, I took,
If anyone has a cell phone that might be on or on vibrate, if you could just check it.
I projected revenue based on the new ratables and the 2% tax that we currently have. And I applied, we've been averaging the last 3 years about a 1% growth in our ratables. So I applied a 1% growth factor for the years following for 2008 and 2009, right, to try to project pretty much what I think we'll realize in actuality. The second column, open space portion of 2005 bond, that's full 68% of the 2005 bond was for open space. Right, so that's full 68% of the total principal and interest payment on that bond. So I'm proposing fully funding the open space portion of that bond through the open space trust. Next column would show the annual excess or deficit and the projected balance in the open space trust account. And as you see, you know, if you spend no more money on open space, you're going to accumulate over the remaining 29 years of the existing bond about $11 million in that account.
But I'm confused, and that's not uncommon, so help me here. The amount of the debt that we're carrying for having passed that, you're saying your revenue or your illustration here reflects the amount we're collecting and the amount of money that we're going to pay toward the debt?
Right.
Yes.
The
We already have.
68% share of the debt we already have.
So the 68% share is what's reflected in this column that says proportion of bond?
That's the portion of the debt payment that the open space fund the open space account can fund.
Okay.
So right now, Mr. Filiaccio, this year, you're projected a $23,000 deficit
Yes.
between the taxes that we receive and the money we already owe
Between-
towards bonds for open space.
07 taxes versus 07 debt service, yes, a $22,000 deficit for the year, which would reduce our balance from 1.24 to 1.22.
Okay, and there's 1.24 million in there right now.
Which gets us to the sum of the net available money of $1,221,459.
Correct.
So accounting for the debt, accounting for the prior monies left over, we'll have roughly $1.2 million to spend on open space,
Yes.
Yes.
township's portion.
Mayor, what this isn't counting as well is a balance that we have, an unexpended balance we have in that open space bond.
The
por-
1.2.
Part of which is going to the acquisition of the back portion of AST.
Right.
And then and we anticipate still some balance being left over as well, but we don't know yet.
Now, if an application just came through, a special meeting is going to be held by the planning board for Pinnacle property. If we partnered with other government entities, could that be a possibility to be paid for through open space?
Yeah, it's always a possibility. You know, it all depends. For example, if you were to build on it in any way, then that may, you know, with one partner, that may exclude another, such as Green Acres. So, you know, it would all depend on what the partnership arrangement was.
Green Acres is touchy.
Last time I remember us speaking in depth, and I don't want to make an issue of it right now, but we spoke about getting a lot of money back from the Harms Tract, $6 million. Have we received any money yet back from the state, from the Harms Tract?
We are, there is $1 million that we anticipate we will be getting back for the Harms Tract.
We haven't subdivided it though yet, so we can't even apply to get the full $6 million. Is
No,
that right?
right now, there is a balance in the in what was awarded to us at Green Acres. So we're looking at the Harms Tract in terms of the environmentally sensitive areas and possibly subdividing that in exchange for the grant. But that's still in the conceptual phase.
When will you be able to come back to us? Because we do believe we're entitled to get monies back once we're able to subdivide that property, because it was under the PIG
Yeah,
grant.
well, what we've done is we've gotten appraisals for those portions. We're doing environmental assessments for those portions, and if Green Acres agrees, then we'll come to you with that. I anticipate it would be in about a month or two.
So what you're looking for, Mr. Costigan, is roughly 1.6, and that's if everybody else pays their fair share.
Yes,
And
sir.
we've got about 1.2 million that we have access to.
Well, yes, but let me back off a little bit. We may not get all of these farms.
Right.
But I do want to say that there's farms that I have that aren't on this list that I can just plug in there, let me tell you. But for the most part, these aren't things we need today. It's, whether we like it or not, it's a 2-year process. And no matter what the county or the state seems to do, it still seems to be 2 years from the time we have the appraiser come out and walk the farm. So it's not as if we can't play catch-up, even on the 1.6 million. This is the best option, scenario. But as I said, some will never go with us, but I have others to put in their place.
All right, so does it make sense at this point, and it's council's prerogative, to at least give some direction to Mr. Chinyetsky and Mr. Costigan, that it would appear as if netting out AST will have somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.2 million of available funds to go after farms that could potentially be purchased, and that we'd like to give the administration some direction to accelerate making that happen. I think, is that the policy question you're looking for?
Yeah, we're looking for counsel through one vehicle or another that we would, research with bond counsel what's the best way of doing it, be it an older bond or issuing a new bond, but some policy guidance in terms of giving Mr. Costigan a cap to work towards. Not to say that would be it, if he makes success, but at least something that we feel comfortable staff-wise saying, we're going to encumber this and say, you can't touch this from what we project to accumulate in the fund over time.
I need to be clear about something.
Yes, sir.
The mayor just said with AST. Jeffrey, am I mistaken, or is just 1.2 million separate from that 5.5 million we have left over from that bond last year?
That's part of that 2005 bond, and that's factored in as open space as far as our payment here, and that's cash in the bank.
I'm asking this directly, just so I fully understand. We have $1.24 million in this account. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we also have another $5.5 million in cash in the bank.
5, I think.
Okay, so there's $5 million more that we bonded for last year that's sitting in the bank.
Yes.
So this 1.24 million has nothing to do with the 5.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Costigan,
Yes, sir.
what would you think the possibilities are of partnering up with some other government entities to buy that Pinnacle tract?
I know that in the past, some other government entities have been interested in partnering several years ago. Now, going forward, I have been over to see Mr. Koyman, but it had to do with that 13.7 acre piece next to the villages. But I could go, I plan on going back over there Monday on that one. I could go also ask him again about partnering. At one time, the New Jersey State Water Authority, the Monmouth County Park System, and the Monmouth Conservation Foundation, several years ago, were interested. So where that stands in 2007, that's
Can I
a
make a
dice roll.
recommendation to the council, a couple things? Just being conscious of time, Mr. Chinyetsky's reminded me we've got others waiting to come
Yeah.
up. Could we at least give some sense, I think, based on what Mr. Walsh just said, maybe it's 2 tracks. It would appear as if we'd be remiss if we didn't say there's at least $1.2 million available that comes out of our open space fund that the taxpayers voted on, and I'm sure they want us to use it. So unless anyone disagrees, it would appear as if we want to pursue these farms, because this doesn't encumber any additional debt that hasn't already been collected and accounted for. I think the second issue is a good one, which is, we did want to buy Pinnacle. It got to the point where the number could have been more expensive than we were prepared to accommodate, so there is at least $5 million. Maybe there's a separate sidebar meeting, which I'm sure Mr. Wall should be happy to participate in, to try and corral interested parties to approach the developer to see if we could make something happen to pull together an appropriate amount of money, try and buy it in cooperation with other entities. Is that your idea?
That's accurate, Mayor.
So, if anyone disagrees, is that the direction that we'd like to give Mr. Chernetsky and Mr. Costigan?
Is $1.2 million enough? That's all I'd like to know, Mr. Costigan. Or do you need some more powder dry, shall we say?
Well, you got to understand, we can revisit next year and the year after on the budget. We're not going to need a whole million now. The whole million is going to come in if we have to lay out the money for the state and the county, I think, will go along. But
Okay.
that 60% from the state, we may have to lay that out. Cold Snack has been very successful in doing that. They buy it, they lay out all the money themselves, and they approach the state and the county afterwards.
They also have a freeholder from Cold Snack.
Yeah, but this is even prior to that. They've been doing that for years. We learn from them. We learn from Upper Freehold, you know?
Okay, let's go.
And we learn from Assemblyman Dancer from Plumstead Township in Ocean County.
But it sounds like we're in agreement? That's the
Absolutely.
strategy? Okay, I think you guys have your direction.
Thank you,
have a
sir.
question as
I
well?
know, I know that it is late, but partly because I'm a rookie, and partly because I also think that sometimes we forget that the public might not quite understand what it is we're talking about. Can you just very briefly explain what happens when we preserve a farm?
All right, well, this is the process. We contact the farm, or the farm contacts us. We go out, we do an option agreement that for the township, and that option agreement is a contract that says, please don't sell to a developer until we give you a price.
And an option agreement is, we pay them for that?
No, we pay them
Yeah.
nothing.
Okay.
No, $1 for consideration, yeah, that's all.
Technical.
We don't give it to them, we never give it to them. At that point, I also do an application, the state application, which is maybe a 10-page piece.
I understand,
All right,
but at
we
the
get
point...
two appraisers out, the appraisers come out, they say they want 30 days, they give us, they each appraise it as if it were a farm, and again, in the highest and best use if it's sold to a developer. Those two appraisals go to the state. The state head appraiser checks it out, he comes up with a certified value, goes before the state ag committee. Ag committee approves it or disapproves it. They usually approve it. Then we come back, we offer the farmer then, we tell him what the farm owner, what the price is, what the state will pay, and they agree or don't agree. If they agree, we get a letter from them, and the farm owner offers to sell to the county the easement, the development easement, the development rights to the property. At that point, it goes back to the county, the state, Board of Freeholders, and they all put a blessing on it. Then is the final approval. Then we ask the farm owner to sign a contract. Now they're going to be bound because we have to do a survey. A survey costs you big bucks.
I
That's
think
it.
what I'm really
I'm
getting
sorry,
at,
am I
John,
going?
is when we buy the farm, do we actually then, we take title to it?
No. For the most part, we can buy direct. We can do a fee simple, but no. Everything that we have here, we buy the development rights. That's the price that we pay the farmer. They can never develop it. We put a restriction on the deed, it goes to the county. The county holds the restriction for the most part. But the farmer, he's doing the same thing. If he's got equine, he's mucking stalls the same way, he's just got $1 million or $500,000 or whatever he's got for his development rights, that stays a farm forever. That's the bottom line.
The
I'm
simplest
sorry.
explanation, because your point is a very good one, is that we get real estate appraisals, we pay the farmer a certain dollar amount per acre that they get in upfront cash value, and in exchange for taking that money now, they in essence agree to deed away ever selling the land for private development purposes in perpetuity.
Yes.
And that's basically all that
Yes.
it means, and they get this upfront cash in exchange for they're never going to develop it. and the race to the moon here, so to speak, is that we can only pay a certain amount per acre, whereas a private developer can come in and can pay a farmer probably 10 times what we're capable or able to pay. And
Yeah.
that's the challenge.
Mayor,
But,
I'm sorry. I was going to say, in terms of get back to the budgetary aspect of it, I'm going to make a note for myself and for finance, just to bear in mind that although council talked about now the 1.2 million, we're going to make a note staff-wise to say, if things ever happen in terms of other acquisitions, let's say you're talking about Pinnacle or other things, that we will come back to you and say, look, we're getting to the point where there's only like $3 or $4 million left. Let's take a look at where we stand with farms before we hit into that, should things progress to that point.
Let's hope Mr. Koskin gets us to that point. Thank you for all your hard work, sir.
thank you, sir.
Thanks. Anything else on this issue, Mr. Janicki?
Just one thing, just so council understands, one of the reasons for the report I did is to illustrate for you from the Open Space Trust, and many towns use this type of thing for what we in finance call leverage. All right, and the excess over the long run that this fund's going to produce, if that were to be dedicated to payment of a new bond, that would support a $13 million bond. That was the idea calculating this out. Right, so if it comes down to X amount of farmland here, and then Pinnacle or any other piece of property in the town, and we start looking at it, we may want to, at that point in time, start considering leverage rather than paying cash, because you can get that many more acres out of it.
So we could have Mr. Costigan, if he found $13 million worth of property to buy and keep his open space, it wouldn't cost the taxpayers another penny?
No, it would not.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Costigan.
Thank
Great
you,
work,
sir.
as always. I think Ms. Zur is up next, is that right?
Yes, and just again, for the public's benefit, we have tons of bagels in the back, and I don't see anybody eating them.
Well, somebody from the village has just got up.
But, I would invite Ms. Zur, the Director of Senior Services,
Come on up, Ms. Zur.
to join me.
The budget is on page A17. There's only 5 pages on capital, and they'll probably bounce around a little.
Good morning, Mrs. Zur. Welcome.
Good morning.
I think you know everybody up here?
Yes, I think I do.
Mr. Janicki, you want to tee this off for us, please?
I'm going to start by asking Ms. Zur to just kind of give an overview of what her department does following this slide.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. What do we do? I guess I could answer quicker if I said what didn't we do, but I will go over what we do. And I also have something I'll hand out to you before we leave, so it's fresh in your minds. We're open Monday through Friday. We provide a multitude of services to seniors in the community age 60 and over. In addition, we provide services and information to their family members. Thanks, Helene. Who are in the community. If they have an issue regarding the senior. We have a daily nutrition program on site where we serve lunch 5 days a week. We also deliver meals to homebound people. Right now, we have about 60 homebound seniors who receive a hot meal every day. We also have a social worker on staff, a full-time social worker who provides case management services, linking people to resources in the community for income eligible and other services that they may need. And in addition, evaluating people for different levels of care that they may need and different stages of living arrangements based on health issues, based on age, based on environmental factors, that kind of thing. We have transportation services. We transport people to our center every day. We also take people out into the community to medical appointments when we can, on shopping trips, on trips to events at schools and other places that we sponsor and that we work with in the community. We have a senior cupboard called Just in Time Senior Cupboard where we provide food products and other items, household items, personal care items for senior specific. So for those of our lowest income residents in the town, senior residents in the township who really have trouble making ends meet, we try to supplement what they need during the month. We rely, a good portion of our cupboard, we rely on donations for that, in addition to some township dollars. And we have staff members that go out and deliver the items to our seniors so that those people who can't get out and get to the pantry or get to other places are still able to access what they need, and also to protect people's dignity and anonymity so that they don't have to stand in a long line and everyone doesn't know their business.
Okay. The next slide demonstrates the growth in membership at the senior center. You can see that we've almost tripled, about tripled our membership since 2000. And I would ask Carol to discuss a little bit what it means to be a member.
Okay. Again, anyone who's 60 and over and capable of managing independently is eligible to be a member of our senior center. Those people who are, and who's a resident of Howell Township, of course. Those people who are not able to manage independently, we still provide services to those people, but they may not be appropriate for coming into our center because they're not able to take care of themselves while they're at the center. Those people, again, are entitled to the lunch program, entitled to other services we provide, including our social case management services. And we also have exercise classes, we have recreational activities, we have lectures, health screenings, health fairs. We have free legal services that we offer to people. And
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see that one time you put up.
Which one?
Next one?
This one?
Yeah.
I'm saving that one for you.
Oh,
One
you're
second.
saving that one for me. All right, don't
It's a
put it up there for me to
surprise.
get a glance of it,
I had to
please.
skip over it.
Okay.
Carol, would you talk a little bit about the staffing levels at the department?
Okay. We currently have seven full-time staff members, counting me. We have a full-time social worker on staff. We also have a confidential secretary who really serves in the capacity of an administrative assistant. We have a full-time program coordinator, a full-time transportation coordinator, and 2 full-time bus drivers. Our transportation coordinator is also out on the road a good portion of her time transporting people as well. That's our full-time staff. Our part-time staff, we currently have her title is recreation / clerical assistant. She's a part-time person. We did have 3 part-time staff people, and in 2005 there were budget cuts and we lost those 3-time people. The part-time person that we were able to reinstate, we're actually doing that out of our trust fund, not out of our township fund.
So you reinstated them and they're paid out of the trust fund? And
Correct.
How many of them?
1.
How's the trust fund looking?
It's there. It's a big concern of mine because trust fund is a trust fund, so we're relying on donations for that trust fund, and I have great concerns using the trust fund to provide services for our clients, to provide direct services, as opposed to paying a staff person. And while it's well justified because the staff person, without that staff person, I do believe we would not be able to provide as many of the services as we do.
Okay.
It's a dilemma.
Let me just jump in one.
The trust fund does not have a stable source of revenue. So that is a concern when you have an ongoing expense and you don't have a stable revenue stream.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Jeff.
As we indicated in this previous chart that there's been a dramatic growth in a number of members at the center. And what the department is requesting, and quite frankly, you need to look at this in 2 levels of consideration. They're requesting $74,000 increase over 2006 in the personnel area. The rationale is that there's a growth in the customer base, there's an expiration of a grant, and we anticipate the loss of a volunteer. So the department is requesting 3 part-time employees. Frankly, what I would ask council to bear in mind is that I'm sufficiently satisfied that the difference between the growth in membership and the loss in employee power justifies an increase in clerical staff. And frankly, when it comes time to consider whether we're going to hire new people or not, this budget will more than likely reflect an increase one way or another, because I'm in a process of making some immediate transfers now that I understand the issues that are going there from other areas of the organization. So so the budget's going to have to reflect the transfer, okay? So whether or not we authorize new employees or we have to fund the budget transfer, that will be reflected in her budget, because I believe the service needs are there. And again, this is one of those things, if you study demographic trends and what's important to even companies moving into town, I believe our senior services is as much an economic development tool for us as anything else. It speaks to the quality of life in our community, and that's what corporations look for. So I've identified it as strategically important for us, and I'm at least shifting what resources we have towards that area, and then we'll talk about where we can make those up later on.
Can I just ask a question as it relates to the percentage of membership? What percentage of total seniors in the community? I don't know what the number of seniors we have, 50,000 residents. How many of them are of senior age? Do you have a sense of the total senior population? What percentage participate in our programs?
Our membership base now is, I can't read that fine print. It's over 1,800
Right.
members that we have to date. Seniors in the township 60 and over, it's a little over 5,000.
So we have about 5,000 that are 60 and over?
Yes,
And how, I mean, what age do you need to be?
60 and over.
Okay, so you have to be 60.
Yes.
What we're finding are more residents aging in place as well, so that's not necessarily as efficient as if they're, in a unique community.
And it's a pretty happening building over there, isn't it, Ms.
It's a pretty happening building, it certainly is. And in addition to what's happening over there, we also deal with the people in their homes. So while you were there yesterday and saw that party going on, we also had staff people that were out taking care of people in their homes as
I
well.
was line dancing with a couple seniors. Mr. Chinesky, I need to ask you, you said you were 4 staff. She's asked for 3 part-time employees. Are you for all 3? Are you for 1? You for 2?
Well, I'm immediately moving a full-time person in there.
You're immediately moving a full-time person over there.
Yes.
And that's from another?
Another department, yeah.
So will that eliminate 2 part-time employees needed, or are you still under the opinion that 3 more part-time employees will be needed?
I will let Carol answer that, but I anticipate the answer is at least another part-time person would be needed.
Yeah, and which is exactly what I was going to say, at least another part-time person.
So that would knock it down from 3 to 1, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, but from what I understood Mr. Chinesky saying, that full-timer's salary now will be against this budget, so that increase.
It'll have no change to the budget in total.
So
but
we
we're
should
gonna
see a
have to shift it
decrease in
from
a different department?
Well,
Well, no.
that all depends. But we are trying to do the best with the resources we have and put them where the needs are. But again, we'll consider all that in the big picture when we roll it all up. Carol, this is the next slide, which demonstrates your information and assistance. And this was really what was of concern to me. And it also gets to the issue of the trust fund. Because of the rise in membership, we're spending more and more time, or the professional staff is essentially spending less time doing the things they used to do. Maybe not devoting as much time to perhaps speaking to outside groups, resulting in donations. And then in this chart would just demonstrate information and assistance in units of service. We've seen a bit of a drop-off there, too, and I'd ask Carol to talk about that.
Okay. And again, like Tom said, because we are operating with less staff and with more people that we're serving, I still believe we're providing fine quality service, but we've had to cut back. I haven't been able to do as many speaking engagements because I've been needing to do some more office work, because as we have people coming through our doors, in the course of a day, we could have anywhere from, depending on what we have going on, anywhere from 30 to 200 people coming through our doors, besides the phone calls that we need to field and the information that we need to get out there. And so staff people have had to take away from other responsibilities so that we can serve the clients who are coming through our doors. And my concern is that with the growing population, with the senior housing that's being built, and more seniors not only coming to our township, but because they're living longer, thank goodness, and aging in place, they're requiring more time and more services, and I'm very concerned about that pool. How are we going to continue to provide that based on the numbers that we serve and the staff people that we have to stretch?
Mrs. Zor, what kind of an impact do you see with the build-out of Hidden View, which is a senior development in Ramtown? I believe it's 170.
The
homes.
Pine View, yeah.
Right, Pine View, Hidden View. And then also the Colts Neck Crossing development, which is another age-restricted. Now, I understand those are 55 and over, but, at some point in time, 55 is
Will
going
be
to get to 60.
Right. And bear in mind also that though our client base is 60 and over, we do serve family members. We have many calls from people in their 50s who are approaching the 60 age group. And while they can't participate in our center programs, if they need assistance, whether it's from our social worker or information in general, we don't turn people away from that piece of the service. So as a roundabout answer to your question, it will greatly impact the services that we provide, and we do need to serve those residents. We do have 5 members from Pine View Estates already, and there are only 32 of those homes that are filled.
Right.
So word is getting out that we're here, and I'm very glad about that. People do need to know that we're here and that we can assist them. It's going to impact us greatly.
Okay. You want to talk about the socialization and recreation services you provide?
Okay. We have, in addition to the heavy-duty serious business that we offer, we do have, we have a lot of parties. We have educational programs, legal services that are offered to seniors, health screenings, and those things are lumped under our socialization and recreation. And again, if you look there, believe me, we're working harder than ever, but the numbers are going down a little bit in the numbers of programs that we can offer because of the same thing.
Right. You'll see where the numbers are going up. It's a matter of making choices.
Right. Benefit screening is something that our social worker does in determining people's eligibility for different programs and different services. The reason that's gone down is several reasons. She's working, like our other staff, working harder than ever, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's really true. The services people need are more intense, and so she's working hard. You can see the extended assessments have gone up because of exactly that. People need more intense service in the extended assessment as well as case management. Those numbers have gone up.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means, what extended assessments are?
Extended assessments are, paperwork-wise, an extended assessment is a 27-page tool that we're required to use because of grant funding that we have. But extended assessments are narrowing in on people's needs and hooking people in with determining what services the person does need, and just getting very involved with the client, doing a lot of income evaluations and other health evaluations and that kind of thing to determine just what services the person can use.
So the focus, you can see, is shifting to some of the real heavy-duty assistance that an aging population is going to require more and more. Okay. Before we get into the capital budget, which is mostly about transportation, any questions about the service or the operations aspect of the presentation?
Any questions, anyone?
No.
Okay, good.
Okay. Okay, can you just explain a little bit about the transportation services that we offer?
Okay. We have, I mentioned before, the drivers that we have, and we transport people daily into our center. and also to other places that seniors need to go, medical appointments, to the grocery store, to the malls, to different programs that we have outside of our senior center building. In January alone, just this past January, which isn't reflected on those charts, we put 4,172 miles on our vehicles just in 1 month, where we had 2 snow days, so we didn't have our drivers out on the road. And we also had 2 holidays. So that gives you an example of how much our drivers are out there and how many miles we are transporting people. And you know better than I do how big Howell Township is. So seniors are on the buses for a long time, and our drivers are out and about, and we're
So
putting
in
miles on the
16
bus.
days, you put how many miles?
4,172.
Right, I think we totaled up the year at about 50,000.
Mhm.
Last year, at about 50, almost 50,000 miles between 9 vehicles.
Between 9 vehicles?
Because in addition to our buses, we have cars, very old cars, which is why
Okay.
I'm asking for another one, where we transport those very frail people who can't get up into the bus.
So you have 9 vehicles, and they roughly all put on about 5,500 miles.
No. You can see there that, well, if you're going across the board, yes, but really it's our buses that put on the most miles.
Okay. This gives you, let me just,
That's a lot? I don't get it.
Yeah,
Pardon me?
that's what I was going with.
I think we're
55.
surprised that the number is not higher.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
doesn't
so low.
seem, I mean,
Because we don't use the 9 vehicles. Because we really, the majority of our transportation is with the 3 buses.
But even so, even if you had 3 different vehicles,
1,700 a
you know,
month.
1,700, that's, I mean, just from a personal perspective, we all put
20,000.
I put 30,000 miles on a car in a year, and believe me, it isn't even an apples-to-apples comparison. I know what you would say. It's night and day, but I think to suggest that that's a lot of miles, at least I'm only speaking for myself, over 9 vehicles, even over 3 vehicles, that doesn't seem like a lot of wear and tear.
If you have as many miles as we do on ours, let me get that.
all right, let me,
Okay.
if I can just call your attention to the next sheet. The 2 vehicles of concern are a 12-passenger bus, which we rely on quite heavily. That's approaching 160,000 miles. If you remember the handout that I gave last year in terms of the municipal benchmarks for these types of vehicles, you typically want to start replacing these things at 100,000 miles. How old is this bus, Carol? Remember, I don't have the age.
1995.
So it's a 95 bus. Parts are harder to come by. They break down more, and I'll show you the cost associated with the older vehicle. The other thing the department's looking for is a new car. And again, the benchmark we set here is at about 85,000 based on the ICMA standards, and this vehicle is well in excess of 120,000. This next chart shows you with these 2 vehicles what their expense has been over the past 4 years, how much time they've spent in a garage over the past 4 years. This 12-passenger bus has cost us close to $9,000 over the past 4 years in parts and man-hours to maintain, and you see that how that compares to some of the newer ones.
Mr. Chinaski, though,
Yeah.
unless my numbers are wrong, 1995 vehicle, it's got 160,000 miles over an 11-year period. It's about 14,000 miles a year. I'm missing.
That's what you're saying. That
We've averaged it out.
Simplified to 3. She said we used a lot more.
We don't, 9 vehicles are there, but they're
Like this.
No, I'm only talking about the one vehicle. He said there's a 12-passenger vehicle.
Mhm.
It's a 1995, and it has 160,000 miles on it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you take 11 years divided by 160,000 miles, it's about 14,000 miles a year.
No, it's been more miles the last few years because as we've grown, we've had the buses out on the road more. 11 years ago, we didn't serve nearly as many people as we do now.
But the town,
So-
I mean, the radius of the town is the same. Maybe you might be stopping more frequently.
Well, yeah,
But
and
the
going
radius
back,
of
and
the
and
town is
also,
the same.
of course, it's the same, but you're talking about more stops. The buses aren't just bringing people in, and then the people go home at 4:30. The buses are out and in, out and in, out and in. The bus drivers are making 4 and 5 and 6 trips a day with the same buses because you can't keep seniors on the bus for 2 hours to get into the
Right,
complex.
I think, if I understand it, 10 years ago, you may have put 5,000 miles on a
Correct.
bus, and now you're putting 20,000
Correct.
miles on that same bus because you're serving more people, so you're going to more places.
Right.
Okay.
And over the past 4 years, we've spent $9,000 in repairs?
Yes.
And what was the actual downtime? Do we have that when that vehicle was not available for use?
I
don't
I
have
do
that.
have it. I could get it for you. I don't have it right here. And that is a dilemma, and that does happen, and oftentimes with the two oldest buses, they both break down at the same time, and then it's a real juggle.
Which it gets back to this standard that ICMA has set out as a good place to consider replacing a vehicle just in terms of mileage, not to mention years. The cost of parts and downtime really starts to escalate once you for a passenger bus once you hit that 100,000 mile mark.
Is there a mandate, and I don't know, like with a school bus for school children, is there a mandate where you can't use this vehicle after a certain amount of miles?
100,000 miles. In fact, the last vehicle at the end, no, it's not that one.
This one?
One of them, when the school systems weren't able to use their buses anymore, they gave one to us.
Okay, so we have a mandate that says we can't transport kids on a bus after so many miles, but we don't have one that says the seniors? I don't. Okay.
There's no state standard?
Not that I know of. If there was, I wouldn't be looking quite so desperately into your faces for
Yeah.
a new vehicle.
Okay, so that's,
Okay.
I'll just go back to
What
here.
else, Jeff?
So,
So in total, you're looking for two vehicles. If this capital report is right, you want a
Correct.
14-passenger, and you want another transportation car.
Yes,
One's for
please.
70 and one's for 30.
The 30 actually is more like 20.
So why does it say 30?
That was an error on my part when I did the
I was
budget
gonna say,
last year.
What are you buying, a Mercedes? I mean,
No, but if you know of one,
$30,000 for a
In
car.
defense to the
No.
department, they did estimate on what the costs were.
Yes, and
since then,
that's an
we've
error.
gotten state contract prices that.
Right.
We fine-tuned them.
So the number is actually, what?
18,775.
And
I didn't get the change.
Okay. So you're looking for 70,000 for a 14-passenger van?
Correct.
And 18,000, and then the 1995, that just, what do we sell that as at auction or something?
correct.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else in capital, Mr. Czerniecki?
No, that's it. And again, with respect to the vehicles, I think it'll be important that we weigh all our risks and opportunities across the departments. But I think in terms of getting the word out to the departments that, look, there's certain benchmarks I want you to look at before requesting these, then we can roll them all up and treat it as one budget at the end.
If I may make one additional suggestion. What we did when we met with other departments and we were talking about vehicles is we used the $18,000 for the '06 models as a benchmark and reduced everybody to a consistent $20,000 to allow for possible price increases this year. So I would make that suggestion on this rather than put 18,000 in there. I would suggest you use the 20. We'll be consistent with the other vehicles, and it does allow, if the price goes to 19,000, you budget 18,000. She doesn't get the vehicle.
All right, are there any other questions for Ms. Zur on any part of her budget?
Ms. Zur, let me ask you one final question. What do you think is more important if you had to make a choice in what was more important to you to get, new vehicles or more staff?
They're both.
you need the vehicles to drive the staff around, right?
And
Need the
no,
staff for the vehicle.
they're equally. I would say
How long
equally.
has it been since you got any new vehicles in your department?
We were approved for a bus also last year.
Okay.
And that's in the works right now.
Yeah, I mean, when is that expected to arrive? Because I remember we bought it.
We're in the process of going to bid now.
So it took a year? Wow.
Takes about as long as an ambulance does.
Well, the ordinances weren't available by the time it was effective after the budget process. The money wasn't available from the bond ordinance until September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Zur.
Thank you
We
very
appreciate
much.
your
Thanks
time
for all your
this morning.
support.
Mayor, can I request a 5-minute break?
Sure. Take 5-minute recess.